So it seems that battalions as we knew them are, like so many other things in AOS 4.0, going the way of the dodo. They are instead being replaced by a new system which is called the Regiments system. Like currently, your army will consist of a variety of units and they are set up and chosen in various ways. But unlike the current system where you have a strict set of choices, you have to have one leader, you have to have at least 3 battle line or 2 in a 1000 point game, and then fit this into various battalions such as the infamous Battle Regiment, which as you can see on your screen now has to contain at least 1 leader, 2 troops choices, and then up to an additional 2 leaders, 3 additional troops, and then a monster or an artillery piece if you want, and then that nets you the vaunted bonus that everyone goes for of the 1-drop deployment. Instead of this, in AOS 4.0, the system is being changed somewhat. Like it's still similar in some ways, but now instead of that battle regiment kind of system where you choose your battalions, your army will now consist of up to 5 regiments. And regiments are this new mechanic where you choose a single hero and then up to 3 other units, or 4 units if that hero is your general, and then this makes up 1 regiment. And it is meant to represent this thematic, stylistic, lore-accurate idea of who that hero is and what units he would be bringing with him. So the example they give on Warhammer Community is the Venari Bannerblade. He can bring Venari units in his regiment. So you could bring your Bannerblade and then some Wardens, some Sentinels, some Blade Lords, even the Ballista, all of which have that Venari keyword. And so on the face of it, you can potentially be a bit more free. You are not just restricted to 1 artillery piece in this regiment, but you are also in some ways more limited because you can't just bring any hero and then any random selection of troops and monsters with him. It has to fit into a specific keyword criteria. In essence, it seems that you will likely have a more easily identifiable mini force within your army, from what I can tell, which is made up of units that are kind of lore accurate to that particular regiment and that particular hero. Now, they do mention there are some caveats to that. Big heroes like Teclis can include anything from the army book in their regiments, so you can still do this very mixed regiment. And I imagine, from my perspective anyway, someone like Nagash, he will almost certainly be able to bring Graveguard, Blood Knights, and a Terrorgeist, for example, in his regiment with no problem at all. But if your hero for a regiment is just a regular Vampire Lord, they might instead be a lot more restricted in just who can accompany them into battle. As you can see from the article, we do still have reinforcement as well, which allows you to double the size of your unit and double the cost as well. But crucially, the double reinforcement is now gone. So no longer will we be seeing 60 strong units of zombies or 30 Graveguard shambling across the board. And to me, that seems like it's an aim to make these big, super powerful Death Star units, or alternatively, those massive unkillable hordes that can just sit on an objective and outlast your opponent, both a thing of the past. As I mentioned, you can bring up to 5 regiments in your army, and crucially, each of these is a single drop. So if you can fit your entire army split up among 2 regiments by bringing 2 heroes and then up to 7 individual units that go in those 2 regiments, you've got yourself a nice 2-drop army. If it all fits into 1, then even better, you've got your old 1-drop again, but trying to fit a whole good force into 1 regiment where you've only got 1 hero and up to 4 other units in might be a bit challenging. So I imagine it is going to be quite a bit harder to get a strong, complete army and still get that 1-drop. It seems like GW are actually forcing people to think a lot more about how their army is going to be made up, what they're going to need, what they're going to bring, who they are bringing in terms of heroes and what units to accompany them, but also how many regiments you're going to need for that, and whether you try and restrict it all down into 2 or 3, or you go for that bigger 4 or 5 regiment army and get a good mixture of all the different units that various heroes can bring, but obviously run the risk of not getting that priority at the start of the game. So your army in general is up to 5 regiments, but you can still bring units that aren't in a regiment. These are what are now called auxiliary units, and anything that isn't in a regiment will be one of these. So just spitballing some examples here, if you want to bring a zombie dragon or a terrorgeist, unless you have a regiment whose hero allows them, you will have to bring those as auxiliaries. And in that example, I imagine something like a Vengorian Lord for the Soulblight will probably be allowed to have at least terrorgeists, maybe zombie dragons, as an option they can bring in their regiment. But if you are just bringing 2 regiments with, say, a Vampire Lord and a Necromancer as your heroes, chances are you are going to need to use one of your auxiliary slots to fit in a zombie dragon or a terrorgeist. And that's quite important because when you take an auxiliary unit, not only of course does that bump up your number of drops as they count as their own unique individual drop, meaning you are much less likely again to get that priority, but on top of that, whoever has the least auxiliary drops also gets a bonus command point every battle round in the game, and from the sounds of it, command points are very, very rare resources in this edition. There is apparently no war scroll or ability in the game that grants you extra command points, so having that bonus from having the least auxiliary unit is going to give you a huge advantage over the course of the game, letting you get off at least a few more key command abilities compared to your opponent. So I think it really will be much more of a mind game compared to 3rd edition, where you actually have to weigh up the pros and cons of trying to squeeze everything you can into just 1 or 2 drops, compared to getting that widest selection of units and bringing some powerful auxiliaries that may cost you not only the priority but also those bonus command points. We also got to see that sub-factions and presumably their sub-faction bonuses and traits are still a thing. They are now in the form of battle formations, and these now appear to be focused on a fighting style rather than being identified specifically with a piece of lore or a hero or character. So rather than the Legion of Night being a thing and being Manfred's bunch of undead, it will, kind of like 40k 10th edition is, just presumably be a more generic stealthy focused battle formation, or charge focused battle formation, or durability focused battle formation that will allow you to emulate the armies of earlier editions, but let you bring certain characters or leaders or heroes without feeling like you are not only doing the lore injustice by bringing them, but also potentially missing out on certain keywords to get the buffs that you want in your army. It sounds, as I said, in some ways like current 40k, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. There is less of a focus on paint schemes matching in AOS compared to 40k, I find, but still I think it's nice that in general it seems we're going to be more free to just bring the units and the models and the characters we like in whatever scheme you want to paint them, and play them in any style you want to play them in, and still get all of the buffs and abilities and benefits that you would be able to. If you want to bring Neferata, but you don't want that Legion of Blood style of gameplay, you can bring her in the more charge-focused battle formation, if there is one, and still get all of those buffs and benefits, but not feel like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by not bringing Manfred instead. We also got told that artifacts of power and command traits in their new form heroic traits are coming back alongside the usual spell and prayer laws. So that's really good news. It seems that the concern that I had seen flying around a little bit, that magic was possibly going away and being folded into the war scrolls like the psychic phase was in 40k 10th edition, that does not seem to be on the cards at all, and we will still all be slinging spells around the battlefield in 4th edition, much like we have been up till now. And for me, that's a really big, important thing. Unlike Psychic, which is important in 40k, don't get me wrong, but for a fantasy game and for, Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar, spell casting and actually casting spells was such a big, integral part of the game. And I would have been really, really sad if it had been turned into essentially just glorified abilities like it has in 40k. In general, it seems that they're drip feeding us some of this new AOS content, so we don't get a huge amount in each of the articles, but From what I've seen so far, I am quite a fan of this. We don't get to see if there's going to be any regiment specific bonuses like the current ones you get for the battalions, where you get a free once per game all out attack or free once per game unleash hell kind of thing. But to me, it seems like armies going forward are going to have a lot more of a theme to them, and it might just be a bit trickier to bring all of those super powerful OP units if you need to fit them into the right regiment with the right hero. So I quite like that. I think it's going to add a bit more thought and decision and weighing up the pros and cons to list building. All in all, I'm a fan from what I've seen so far. It seems quite simple, it seems quite fun, it also seems really thematic, which for me is very important, and I personally can't wait to see what sort of things my death armies can bring along, and also for my Nighthorn in particular, the changes that come in War Scrolls, because now that they've said there is nothing that grants additional command points, that could mean big change for various units, and especially for Kurdos and his If I Cannot Rule None Shall ability, which grants you bonus command points if you're lucky. That's going to need a complete rewrite, and I know all the War Scrolls are being rewritten anyway, but I'm really interested to see what sort of things they change for the characters and heroes that in the past have generated bonus command points, and sort of what their direction is in terms of how they buff your army now. So that's going to be it for this video, but do let me know what you think of the changes. Is it going to make list building more fun, do you think? And also, just from what we've seen so far, how many regiments do you think you will be aiming for in your standard 2000 point games? Are you still going to be going for that 1 drop, or do you think a 2 or maybe even a 3 drop army with 3 regiments is going to be the standard? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.